Hi, I'm Garrett with IDC Woodcraft, and this video is a tip if you're dealing with thin plywood, particularly on a CNC router and you're machining one side. What I want to talk about is warpage that you end up getting in the real thin plywood stuff that you get from the big box stores. And what I learned by virtue of ruining a really nice part, which I'll talk about in a minute, and how to prevent it. The causes, the mechanical causes, some of the other causes behind it. I made these pretty cool coasters for a local restaurant. Some of the smallest V carving I've done yet, which turned out really awesome. And raised lettering, and it has that wood grain look in the background and the details of the leaf edges. You know, these came out beautiful. I was intending to sell these through the local restaurant that is named Bad Apple Max, a great place to eat, by the way. If you're ever in Madison, Indiana, make sure you stop by Janet's place. But what happened was this. Every single one of them has a warp. Where's that one? There it is. That one. This one. That's the best one. And I've learned a lot behind this whole process about the warp, why it's happening, and how to prevent it. So first I want to talk about the plywood itself. After doing some research, I discovered I'm not using the right ply. You can see it's a 3-ply. And 3-ply, you know, there is no strength to it other than the core board that, you know, is the material, the bulk of the material, and then the 2 plywood sheets on either side that is for decoration. But it has very little durability when it comes to warpage. What I discovered on this was this warp happened very specifically. Let's see if we can get this lit up just a little bit better so you can see. You notice that the core grain on this one is going that way, and the core grain on that one goes that way. The warp on this one is like that, side to side. When I push top to bottom, there's very little warp. On this one, the side to side, is, I mean, you can see movement, but it's more like warped that way, and majority of the warp is that way. And this follows along with every one of these. So these other 2 are sideways grains, and so they're all warped like that. The other thing I noticed was all the warps went upward. So what has happened is, because I took away all the supporting structure of the veneer on top versus the veneer on the bottom, the inner core naturally started to warp in the direction where there was less resistance. So that was the first problem. I cut out enough material that it lost its ability to keep itself stable. And the other thing is the way it warped. I indicated or showed you that the grain goes that way. The warp goes like that. So the warp is basically like that. Always on the cut side and always cupping like with the grain. The other thing is that these were not nearly as warped until I stained them, which means I introduced moisture to them. So what I've learned how to prevent this, first of all, is get a plywood that is going to have more ply to it, a minimum of 5 ply. That way you have a central core ply that's going to support the whole thing, and then you've got the boards on the outside that's going to support it. Ideally, go to 7 or 9 ply, which is what I'm going to go to. And then also, as opposed to letting this dry in the air, throw it in the oven at 120 degrees so the environment is hot and it's dry. And that'll draw the moisture out of it very quickly from the stain. I put a couple of links down below of places where you can actually get that. Lowe's does have a 5-ply material that I got here. If I can get focused, and you can see there's a core in there. The central core is a thin ply. I don't know how this is going to cut yet, but this is some of the stuff I found out. Also, in your selection of material, if you want to watch out for that curvature, this one doesn't have it. I was very selective in what I got. And the other thing is how I will store it from now on. I will not store these outside. I will store them inside between something that's flat. So now my 1/4" ply, the ones I picked are very flat from the store, and then I use particle board, which is dense, flat, and heavy, set on top of it, inside an environment that stays pretty stable. This has been a great learning process in other ways as well, and I'm going to actually shoot a couple videos on that. The first one is a problem that most woodworkers have when they're running their CNC routers. Witness marks. You see all the paths that the tool took to cut all the material out, and naturally you can't really sand that. But by the time I was done, I was able to come up with a method that eliminated the witness marks altogether when it came off the router. And you can see there's not a single witness mark on this. Also, I'll do another video on how to get the detail in the leaves like that. You see in the first one, that detail is not there. In the second one, I incorporated it into it. So adding nice details to your stuff. And the third thing I found out that I'll just throw in here, when you're cutting a veneer and you're going into it, keep in mind the direction of the top layer, and the first underlayment is going to go in the opposite direction, or 90 degrees as far as the grain goes. And I mean, look at the look of that. It really adds an interesting type of background to it. So that was a really nice perk coming off the machine. So keep your eye out for that video that's going to talk about these witness marks, because that's a huge, huge problem. I've seen it many times in the CNC groups. People ask for advice about that all the time. So I am going to make a video in a lot of detail about that. That's going to show you this technique that I actually discovered that really works really well. If this video is helpful, and look at that little button down below that looks like that, and I'd appreciate if you would push that. And subscribe if you want to know more. I try to do a lot of videos on CNC router work. And yeah, happy CNCing. I will talk to you next time.